In this episode, we're going to bring KJ on the show, and KJ has a problem with regard to his lead, right? So he's trying to go to his gym. Many gym owners deal with this, and we're going to dive deep into how do you look at your growth rate relative to lead, and we're going to talk front end, back end. We're going to unpack all of that and give him a ton of valuable information. So real quick, tell me a little bit of the box. What's the name of the box? Where are you at? And then we'll get into some of the numbers.
Yeah, CrossFit 859, just outside of Lexington, Kentucky. We opened in 2012, so we're coming up on 13 years here soon. We've evolved a lot over the last 12 years.
You said you started right before we turned on the camera. You said you had how many owners when you? Generally speaking, we do not see partners work well in the CrossFit facility. And when I say generally speaking, I mean absolutely never. So if you have partners, short and sweet is one of you will not be in the business in some time in the near future.
So we started off with 8 partners.
It's a good business model.
It was just a bunch of dudes that thought, hey, let's just go start a CrossFit.
What could go wrong?
And none of us cared.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this goes with a lot of people. None of us cared about the money. It was just something we loved, and so we went and did it. So, and it's years and years later that I'm like, oh, we probably should care about the money. So how
many owners currently?
Me and another guy who was not one of the original 8.
Got it. So when are we getting rid of him? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I would, that's the smart thing at some point.
Yeah, it's a whole. We could do a whole nother issue on partnerships. But so, talk to me about like what is your biggest problem? What are we trying to solve today?
Yeah, so we grew, I think, relatively quickly. We got up to 250, 275.
Okay, so big numbers
before COVID.
Right.
COVID hit us, and everything's just been really different since then.
So this actually comes up quite a bit where, with the COVID thing, many people, and it's not just CrossFit affiliates, are referencing COVID period. One thing I think is interesting is to consider how far removed we are from COVID. So we're about 36 months removed from COVID. And yes, there were absolutely things that happened there and exposed a lot of businesses, but realizing like if we're still solving problems that came up from COVID, or we're still dealing with the negative impacts of COVID, that means that we haven't shifted business models or strategy fast enough, and those problems will probably only get worse.
We moved into a new building, so we're in a 10,000 square foot facility.
Do you own that?
My partner does.
Got it. So the entity owns the property as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, but we do have a hefty rent that comes with a 10,000 square foot brand new facility.
Are you the sole tenant in the building?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're responsible for the full mortgage. Okay.
Yeah. So I rent out one little space to a PT.
Got it. Yeah, but that's not going to make or break your mortgage payment.
No.
Okay. Cool. So you have this 250, 275 component, and where are you guys at now?
We're probably more like 175 to 200.
Okay.
Membership wise.
Okay. So we'll call it, roughly 30% drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But and some of that honestly is cleaning up our membership, because we had a lot of people in the system with free memberships.
Yeah, I was going to say, was that a true 275 or?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not.
Cool. Okay. So with that, so we've had some shrinkage inside the business. What is the main issue? What's your biggest pain point that if you could fix it today would put you guys in a position that you'd want to be, where whatever that looks like?
Yeah, I think for us it is getting back up in membership. A lot of times people talk about, well, when you add members, you have to add classes, you have to add coaches. We don't need to do that. We have plenty of space. We have room in all of our classes.
Yeah. Okay, so usable square footage is an interesting conversation to be had. We have a lot of affiliates that we work with who think they need to cap classes or think they need to move to a larger space. And in almost all instances, they're not maximizing their usable square footage. So finding out what is the absolute max number of people they can fit on the floor from a safety standpoint, which means they might need to rearrange the rig. So a lot of times growth can be found inside of the gym by looking at what is your usable floor space, and then optimizing that. Because if you can add, call it 3 people per class, and you run 8 classes a day, that's 24 more people, call that 60% of what you could grow in the overall gym. It starts to really make not moving the actual answer in a lot of instances. So really looking at your usable floor space is very important. But what's your usable square footage on the floor?
Oh man, probably, at least 8.
So so you
We designed
there's
it
probably
for
no
CrossFit.
scenario. So there's no
Like,
scenario in which you're like, you could easily run 30-person classes in there, you'd be fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Okay, so getting back to that number, and then what is preventing you? What's the struggle to go back to the number? So we were there, we're not there anymore. What happened outside of COVID? Because we're kind of back to normal at this point.
Yeah, it's wild because I think the members that we've lost, it's not because, people got mad and left.
Right.
It's people moving or people, just changing stuff up with their life. And so retention isn't necessarily the issue.
What's your monthly churn?
Oh man, I'd have to look.
You could ballpark it.
Currently, I think we're probably
5%.
Yeah, somewhere around in there.
Okay. Okay.
Which, obviously, the bigger you get, the more people that is.
The math changes for sure, and we'll talk about that.
But yeah, I think figuring out ways to get new people in. I think because we've been around so long, the excitement factor's not there anymore.
Okay.
When we first opened, everybody's inviting everybody that they knew.
Right.
And that's just not the case. We've run Bring a Friend Week, and I'll get 1 or 2 members.
Right.
So
we'll talk about that too. What average revenue? What are you guys looking at monthly basis?
monthly, we're probably around 22
to 22K.
Somewhere around in there.
Cool. And then what would you say is outside of growth? What would you say is your biggest pain point inside of the operations of the business?
Probably as far as operations, coaching schedule, honestly.
Okay.
And keeping.
Got it.
I've got a lot of coaches, but they're all part-time.
Right. Okay.
And so most of them have other jobs.
Got it. Okay. And then last question before we're kind of diving, because we can go a couple different directions here, but I think I know where probably the biggest bang for our buck is going to be. Is what on average are you looking at from a lead flow standpoint on a weekly basis? Like how many opt-ins are you getting to say, hey, I'm interested in 859?
Man, on average, I would maybe get 2 right now.
Okay.
I would
So
say.
relatively low. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we'll call it 8 to 10 a month.
Sure.
Ish. Okay.
Yeah.
So for a gym your size, that becomes problematic, and I think that's where we're going to go.
Yeah.
As far as how do we start to look at that?
Yeah.
So when we're looking at this, the first thing to highlight is kind of where you're at in gym size, right? So this is, and if we look at the blueprint that we have, we're looking at you would be essentially phase 2 based on revenue range and size, right? So this is kind of that 20 to 24 a month. And the number one objective here, which is why you're seeing that problem, is hey, if I had to solve one goal here, what's the main thing I'd be driving for? Which is exactly what you're chasing, which is I need to see consistent revenue, consistency with revenue, right? So you're in that danger zone where you're looking at, if I'm bouncing between 20 and 24, that really starts to hurt, as far as operational efficiency inside of there. So when we look at revenue size and gym size and team size, it maps out pretty clean that we have to start to solve this problem right here. And then there's a couple different ways that we can do that. So tell me a little bit more about Bring a Friend Week. So when you guys were running that, walk me through how it went. If you know rough numbers, we can walk through that, because then we're going to reverse engineer that, and we're going to start to map out how we get here via a couple different scenarios.
Yeah, Bring a Friend Week for us, I think, and again, I think longevity for a lot of people makes them passive.
Right.
Most of the people that were invited to come that week were invited by newer members.
That makes sense.
And so I have a lot of members that have been around a long time, since we opened.
Yeah.
And they're just not on fire anymore. They're still there. We do the committed club thing, and they're 12 months in deep on doing it.
Okay.
They don't miss a day.
So when you guys run Bring a Friend Week, do you know when was the last time you went? You ran one?
We probably did it in, I think, January or February.
Okay, so relatively, we're filming this in the beginning of April, so okay.
Yeah, it might have. Yeah,
that's a good time, right? So if you're going to run that, we always recommend at the beginning of the year, keep it away from Jan 1
Yeah.
People are still trying to settle
Right.
back into, and a lot, when we see Bring a Friend Week in early January, it typically doesn't perform very well. So roughly how many people show up or showed up for that one specifically?
So we had, signups ahead of time.
Yep.
Write their name down, give me their
Okay.
their phone number. I reached out to all of them, and I probably had 10 to 12 people
Okay. And then any conversions off that?
signed up, and I think I got one conversion.
One.
off of
Okay.
that.
What we would want to see in there is anywhere between 15 to 40%, right? So you're at like 10, call it
Yeah.
roughly. So still a little bit low, and we could dive into that too.
But I think the 10 number up front is low also. Like I'd like
Correct.
to see.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I think that's low.
20.
We would like to see, obviously some of that is dictated on gym size, but at 175 to 200 members, you should be easily pushing mid-20s
Yeah.
when you do this. So
Yeah.
number one is thinking about promoting that really heavily.
Yeah.
So I tell people when you run Bring a Friend Week, it's giving you carte blanche to effectively overload people with marketing, right? So people are okay with marketing when it's based around an event. So use the CrossFit Games as an example. If they were sending us, well, now actually we're gonna start seeing a lot more emails about the CrossFit Games.
Right.
But let's say that the games ended yesterday. If I start getting emails about signing up for the Open the following day, I'm like, dude, get out of here.
Right.
Like, this makes no sense. But if I'm leading into an event heavy, people say, how much can you promote it? I'm like, you couldn't promote it too much. It's not a thing. Right. So email, social media, announcements on whatever your CRM is going to be, announcements to the whiteboard, just to remind people about it, and then remind them of the incentive as well. So if you're going into that, and then we could talk a little bit about, but make sure that week is fun.
Yeah.
Make sure the week is fun. Like tailor your programming to make it more fun. Partner workouts, things like that. Okay. Now, so that's execution of Bring a Friend Week. However, even if we do that, we still need to get into some of the math here. You guys will hear us talk about churn quite a bit, and it's really important to define churn. So churn, there's a lot of different ways to calculate churn. Go with the easy one, which is like, what is the number of people that cancel on a given month, okay? It's very important to understand churn because churn has a significant impact. That's the back end, who's falling out of the bucket. Churn very much dictates the requirement for front-end sales. And most people are just looking so much at front-end sales that they don't understand how much stress that puts on the sales component when fixing your churn actually eases the requirement on the front end and allows you for a faster rate of growth. And so if we're looking at your churn, if we're looking at you said 5%, right? That's kind of ceiling for what we'd want to see.
Yeah.
At 175 members, we really need to know what that means from numbers wise. And what you're looking at is, I think it's like 8.75, so like 8 normal people in that Jason Ackerman. But let's round it and let's call it like 9 members, right? So that becomes the number that are reliably going to walk out of the door every single month that we do this. And this is how we start to figure out what do we need coming in the front end in order to do this, at which point now we can quantify that and then come up with whatever our plan is moving forward to do that. So when we look at how are we going to grow the gym, the first thing that we want to outline is something that we call your lead need, right? And we want to quantify this. So it's not more leads, right? There's an actual number here and we want to figure out what that is. Okay, so quickly on this with regard to your lead need, right? So everybody wants more leads and fundamentally it's just a bad question. So we're really trying to get to the bottom of this is like, what is the actual number? Once you can figure out the actual number, the other things start to fall in place. But if I leave it as an arbitrary more, then it's really hard to come up with a solution for more because that really doesn't make any sense and there's nothing definitive about it. So the easy solution is take your churn, multiply it by 3. All of this is based on the assumption that you have a 50% close rate on sales. On the current leads that you get, what would you say, what is your, and you can guess or give me pretty close, what's your conversion rate when somebody hits the website and submits an inquiry?
If they come in the gym,
Okay. High.
it's super high.
Yeah. Okay. So
Like I can close them if they get if they set foot in the gym.
yeah. So that's a good teaching point too, which is that's almost everybody in the CrossFit space.
Yeah.
And it's really important for us as gym owners to know why that's the case. If they choose to come and sit in the facility, they probably already made the decision.
Yep.
So then I have to back up one step, which we'll walk through and say, okay, how many opportunities did I get this month? And then I look at the conversion, and then I can start to outline the numbers here. So of the 8, we'll call it, to 10 leads that you're getting every single month, how many new members would you sign up every single month? Okay, so a recurring theme probably across every episode that you guys will ever talk to us or hear from us is you must know your numbers, right? Now, what numbers do you need to know? The number of things that you will become familiar with will increase as you become more competent as a business owner. The 2 numbers that I will tell most people that they should know right out of the gate is I want to know front end and back end. I want to know what the churn is, and I want to know what funnel efficiency is, meaning what is happening in the sales process from lead to the website to conversion or not conversion. Start with those 2, keep it very simple. There are a million numbers that you can start to address and know and track after that, but start with 2 and then stack on top of that.
We're probably, if there's 10 leads, I'm probably signing up, I would say 6.
6, okay,
6 to 7
perfect.
for
So,
sure.
So inside of what we're going to walk through here, which is like how do you calculate your lead need, we're really only going to make one assumption when we talk about this, and that assumption is that I'm going to be able to close at 50%. So 50% close rate is how we come up with this calculation. Okay? And the reason this calculation is really important is so your lead need is going to be 3 times churn. Right? So if we were to run rough numbers, it's just 3 times that number.
Yeah.
So it's just rounded up to 9. So my lead need now looks like 27.
Okay.
That's the number that I need coming in the door. So if we look at this and we say, hey, I've got 8 people coming in the door, or let's call it 10 people coming in the door every single month, and I need 27 because closing at 50% puts me at kind of 14, which means I'm reliably going to beat 9 every single time.
Yeah.
So understanding what your churn is then helps you dictate what do I need on the front end with reliable close rate that I can mathematically beat churn every single time. So we know that the number is 27. So now we look at the sales efficiency and the funnel pipeline that we're looking at. So if I've got 10, those are all organic, I'm assuming, right? Meaning there's no outbound activity, right? I'm waiting for somebody to hit the website, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if we've got 10, how do we bump that up to 27? Because we're talking about 150% increase here. How do we make that happen? And the first thing I would look at is, right, that's the goal, is we take a look at the website and simplify everything on the website.
Yeah.
So walk me through on your forms on your website, how does that work? If I want to show up at 859, what do I have to do?
Homepage is inundated with it.
Okay.
So we just redesigned the website within the last year. And so Wadify is handling all of our website stuff now. So
Okay.
it's all integrated with.
Let me ask you this. If I go click on a button, what is the series of actions I have to take?
Should just ask you for your email, phone number, full name.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So that's the first thing I would do. With that, has this changed since you changed websites? Okay, so one safety caveat here. When you switch websites, if not done correctly, you run the risk of having a substantial drop off in your lead flow, right? If we're not doing simple things like redirect, or there's not some basic SEO components or CRO components, search engine optimization and click rate optimization done inside of that website, it will not perform. So at the end of the day, the only thing we care about website is that they deliver leads. If I don't care about SEO, I don't care about anything else. If it does not deliver leads, it is not a good website.
Yeah, we had a couple hiccups with the system.
Okay.
So there was a little bit of time where it wasn't working.
Okay.
But it is working
Got it.
currently.
Okay.
So it's.
Do you know roughly
it's
what
gotten
that
better.
number was prior to the website? Is it back to the normal number?
Yeah, I think we're back to the normal number, and it's possibly a little bit better because
Okay.
I do think it's easier now than it was.
So there's 2 things, right? So when I'm trying to, what I can try to change this number,
Yeah.
or I can try to change that number. Ideally, we would do both.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
And
how do I change
this might
this?
be high, honestly, looking at it. So we're probably underneath that a little bit.
You know, it wouldn't be weird if that was the number. We see a lot higher than 5% on a regular basis, but this is important math to do on this as well. If we can pull that down to 3, this changes the math completely, right? So if I go 175 Now I go to 5, right? So this number changes. If I go from 5% to 3%, that goes from 9 to 5.
Right.
This totally changes the equation because I was trying to go from 10 or to 27. Now I'm trying to go from 10 to 15. And this is the key, right? Because if you're only worried about front end, it basically ignores what makes my life easier on the back end.
Right.
That is very easy to do, right? This is a couple of outbound things and then cleaning up the pipeline. So if we were looking at close rate, let's just say that I can get 10 and then I'm selling through 6, right? That's a 60% conversion, which is good, right? How do I make that 15 and then still keep 60%?
Yeah.
And that could be any number of outbound things. So looking at reinvigoration campaigns, anybody that's in your cold pipeline that didn't close, reaching back out to them and then creating a new offer for that. Because really and this is the whole point, right? The whole point is like, how do I grow? But that's a very broad question. The new question that you have now, which is a very solvable question, is how do I get 5 more people into my pipeline on a monthly basis?
Yeah.
Because we know if we can pull that churn down, which is a handful of things, like continue doing a lot of the committed club, highlight more successes inside the gym. So keep track of things like PRs, birthdays, anniversaries, somebody's first box jump, all of this kind of stuff. There's really not a ton of ROI in trying to pull it under 3%.
Yeah.
It's negative return on effort. Right? That's just literally people are moving away.
Yeah.
So how do I pull from 5 to 3? That's actually fairly easy to do, honestly. It's like dedicated attention to my clients, make sure the classes are good to go, engage with people on a higher frequency, and then some outbound activity. So I would look at a couple different things, right? So if we were looking at what outbound activity would I have, right? I would be looking at, hey, what is my frequency for bring a friend week? How many times a year do you guys do this?
We did it twice.
Okay, so the minimum is 3 times a year. Now you'll have to do some finagling and figure out like where on the calendar that they should go, because I want to put them at optimal times when they give me the most return, and that's a little bit different for every gym, right? And then the other one is cold leads, right? Just re-engage, right? In any way, we're going to re-engage those cold leads, and then we're going to go to old members. And again, re-engage, right? So same thing. We're going to take that strategy and move it down. And what you do here is you create weekly outbound activity. And this doesn't need to be crazy, right?
Yeah.
This can just be, hey, we're going to export a list of all of our members in the gym. Every lead that we've not closed, it's probably several hundred people.
Right.
And we're going to reach out 15 to 15 of those people every week. So I'm going to try to get 60 people a week to have some sort of reasonable engagement with, to re-engage and bring them back into the gym. I mean, at that point, you would really only have to do, what do I get? So 5 divided by 8%. 8% engagement would put me over the top to come back to. So if I take this and the goal is 5 more people, right, to get back to 15.
Yeah.
But now what you're doing is now there's an actual plan for outbound activity because I've quantified what the number is.
Right.
So the whole thing that we're looking at is you have to solve for this, that we have to figure out what that number is, because that one's daunting.
Yeah.
And this is why you have to look at front and back end.
Yeah.
So if I address from here to here, I mean, look at the difference in that. That's bonkers town by making that one adjustment, because that's compounding down lines. So now I go from 27 to 15, then I can map out to that with outbound activity and say, oh, I think I could get 5 engagements here. And so the other thing we put here for this outbound activity is referrals, right? Meaning inside of the sales process specifically. So if you're getting 10 leads that are coming every single week, every single one of them that comes into that pipeline, you ask for a referral.
Yeah.
So how do I turn 10 into 20? Ask, right? You're not going to get all 10. That's not going to happen. But if you get one of those 10, now I don't need 5 anymore, now I need 4.
Right.
So I'm trying to stack all the math in my favor to make it as easy of a lift as possible to keep pulling this number down. And this is the big takeaway, is that if you don't take the time to run through this, you're just shooting in the dark. And you're coming in with a bunch of stuff that I can't objectively measure and say, hey, this is working or not working. At which point, there's no way for measurement. And we're in the CrossFit is like observable, measurable, repeatable. So I have to figure this out, because if we only looked at increasing the front end, right? Like, I'm gonna make a bunch of bad decisions. I'm gonna make my life harder than it needs to be. It's like, hey, just pull that down. Those people are already there, right? Pull from 5 to 3. Three's very doable. We would consider that Mount Everest, but it is doable. It's not like impossible. Even if you got it to 4, it still changes this number.
Yeah.
Right? You're probably closer to 10 versus 5, but I'll take that versus 17 to increase from there to there. I'd rather go from 10 to 15 than 10 to 27.
Yeah.
So, because that for me that's tangible. I can see an additional 5. Seeing an additional 17 feels very hard to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, what are some things that you guys think that you could do that would fall in that outbound activity here that you think would be like high likelihood for success if we were to start like measuring? Which one of these is easiest for you to do right out of the gate?
So right out of the gate, the old members.
Okay.
I'm currently working, again, Modify kind of has a workflow that re-engages former members
Cool.
Automatically, that I've kind of already started tinkering with a little bit. So that one right off the bat.
Okay. And then where would you go for number 2?
We've already got a little experience with Bring a Friend Week.
Okay.
I don't know if we've had a great experience, but I would like to make
Retool it
a good experience.
Okay.
So
and then pick one more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cold lead is probably. I'm always shocked at how many people take the time to find us on the website, fill out the the consultation form. I reach out to them, and then I never hear back from them.
Cool. So then this is what I would look at for the plan, which is let's reach out to these old members. Let's put another one of these on the books, and then let's do some outbound. And if you wanted to go 4, I like to keep things pretty simple, but this is a layup. Just ask. Put this into your sales process. And again, all of that is outlined in what we've just done there. But those are your 4 steps to increase your overall sales, because we know mathematically that this is going to get us where we want to go and puts us in a positive from a monthly basis every single month.
Yeah.
Right. But that's very tangible.
That's great.
And now I've got a plan. We know what we're going to do. I can communicate this to the team, more importantly, and we go back into growth phase. But this is literally just doing a little bit of math and then moving into an active phase for outbound activity, and just instead of waiting for things to come to me.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
That's great. Yeah,
Cool.
It's very doable.
Awesome.
So,
well, we did it. 20 minutes on the clock, maybe 23. I don't know, it was a little late there, Nate. Yeah, maybe an hour. But again, I hope that helps for you guys. A lot of people have this issue, and I hope this breakdown kind of helps you guys figure out how to address this, because every gym is going to go through this. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. We appreciate you listening and choosing to have us help you in your passion for coaching and affiliate ownership. You can find more episodes just like this on all podcast platforms. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us on any social media platforms, or you can visit www.besthouroftheirday.com to book a call. If you found this episode helpful for you, please share it so that we can help other coaches and affiliate owners to help build a bigger and stronger CrossFit community. Thanks for listening.